Hi, and welcome to Best in Tesla. China has exploded in car production over the last few years, becoming the biggest exporter of cars, beating someone like Japan. But the ramp of BEVs is only going to intensify over the next few years. China is already hitting their new energy vehicle target 10 years ahead of schedule, and in only 5 years they expect to be fully BEV market. China is setting themselves up to become the all-dominating force in the automotive industry. And as this is the biggest car market in the world by far, this will affect the industry as a whole. We have a 5-year countdown for legacy automakers to pivot to profitability in electric vehicles or risk being obliterated by the relentless surge from China. So let's check it all out. Let's dive right in. China set a goal in 2017 to get to 50% new energy vehicles in 2035, but they have basically already achieved that in 2024 and will surpass that in 2025, 10 years early. This will have a huge implication for the entire industry, because this is the biggest car market on the planet. 22.9 million passenger cars were sold in China last year, up 5% from 2023. Nearly 11 million were electric, bringing the new energy vehicle penetration rate to 47.9% in 2024. But during 2024, electric vehicle sales in China have now overtaken conventional internal combustion engine sales. In July 2024, the market share of new energy vehicles in the overall light vehicle sales reached 51% in the world's second largest economy and biggest car market by far. So, new energy vehicles, which of course includes plug-in hybrids and fuel cells, overtook ICE cars in July 2024 in China and has stayed above it ever since. China's rise in the EV world has been extremely impressive. They went from EV sales of 1.3 million to 11 million in just 4 years. EV penetration from 6 to 50 in 4 years. Experts have been saying that they expect China to get to 100% new energy vehicles already in 2028, where they expect 70% being BEVs and the rest hybrids, and 100% BEVs by 2030. So that will also be the end of the plug-in hybrids. There might be a few plug-in hybrids left, but we will see something like Norway, where they have BEVs at 90% and the last 10% is shared between the rest of the powertrains. So yes, Jim Farley was completely right when he said they only have 5 years left to get to profitability on EVs, or they will shrink into a US-only car maker. But I think by 2030, China will have come to the US through Mexico or some other way. They can't keep them at bay forever. So if they are not profitable on EVs by then, the Chinese will just come in and crush their sales in the US as well. They have 5 years period, as then the biggest market on the planet will be 100% BEVs and be spreading all over the world, because China is gearing up to be the production hub for electric vehicles in the future. As Michael Dunn, former GM executive, also shared back in May, China today has enough capacity to manufacture half of the world's 80 million vehicles. By 2030, China's capacity could climb to 75% of the world's volume, according to global data. In 2024, China exported 6 million vehicles to more than 140 countries worldwide, blasting past Japan for global leadership. But that is only half the story, because China has already become the place to manufacture cheap cars. GM has cars made in China and be exported to Mexico and other markets. Chevy's 6 best sellers in Mexico are all built in China. And the same goes for Volkswagen, Stellantis, Mercedes, BMW, Hyundai, Kia, Ford, and many others. They all build cars in China, and that will probably just increase as their factories in the other parts of the world become uncompetitive, as we have been seeing with Volkswagen's factories in Europe. The ID.3 produced in Europe compared to China is about twice the price to produce. And since the whole supply chain for EVs are in China, as Jim Farley also just explained in an interview he did, it will be a lot easier and affordable to set up shop in China. So China will become the biggest car manufacturing hub in the world. Well, they already did that here in 2024, but that is only the beginning. All of this will of course be very bad for someone like GM that has said themselves that they will not be able to produce a $30,000 to $40,000 EV profitable this decade. So when China turns 100% BEVs, GM will not even be able to make an affordable EV profitably. So they will probably turn even more to China to get help to get to profitability, as they have a lot of business in China anyway, but are not keeping up with the local competition. So this prediction of 70% BEVs in 2028 lines up very nicely with Laraffel's nice chart here. And that might even be a little too pessimistic, but we will see what happens. But what I really like about this chart here is that it also shows us that yes, hybrids are a thing right now, but they are just transitioning products. They will go away. Just like we saw in Norway, where the same thing happened there, but they are already at 90% BEVs and hybrids are no more. But what will happen when China is 100% BEVs? Well, they are the biggest market in the world, so if you want to be anything in the future car market, you have to get into the Chinese market. So as China goes, the rest of the world will follow. It will hurt some more than others, as Jim Farley also explained in his interview, that Ford doesn't have much business in China, but someone like GM does, and especially the Germans. And this is also why it is hurting Germany much more that they are losing China, as that was where most of their profits came from. And in the European market, they are not as well protected as in the US, as the tariffs are not as high, and the Chinese are already here and have already started building factories on the continent, some of which will come online here in 2025. And of course, someone like Volkswagen, and Toyota for that matter, is also very big in the rest of the world, but that is exactly what the Chinese are coming for right now. They are focusing on pushing the Western brands out of China and getting a foothold in Europe and the rest of the world. They are growing in Central and South America, Africa, Asia Pacific, so the US might have managed to keep them out of the US for now, but the Chinese are just stealing their sales in the rest of the world, forcing them to become a US-only car maker, and then they will come to the US eventually, but then China will be at full economy of scale with 100% BEVs in their home market, and Ford and GM will still only be at 30 to 40% BEV sales at that point, and will therefore not be able to compete with the most affordable Chinese EVs at that point. And China's lead in battery production could result in a dependency on China's technology and components, possibly leading to a supply chain vulnerability for manufacturers outside China. So sure, they can just localize battery production and refinery and so on, but that all takes a lot of time. And as Jim Farley said himself, they only have like 5 years. So to get all of that done in 5 years seems close to impossible for the slow-moving legacy automakers. Because not only does the Chinese have a huge cost advantage on basically everything from labor to material to energy, so building a BEV in China will always be cheaper than building them in the US. But the Chinese automakers also have a much faster development cycle. So if Ford and GM can come up with a new design, it will likely take them at least 3 years for them to get it to market, whereas the Chinese will be able to do that in only 1.5 years. So how do you catch up with someone that is moving at twice your speed? The answer is you don't. And we have to remember, when we are looking out at 2030, the EVs that will be offered will also be much better and cheaper than they are today. China is already rolling out 600 kilowatt charging in the country, where you can charge your EV up in 10 minutes. But that will only improve. ARK Invest expect that in 2027 there will be EVs that can charge 200 miles of range in just 4 minutes. Then the last thing that ICE cars have going for them, that they can be filled up in just 5 minutes on a road trip, will go away. Then there will literally be no reason to buy an ICE car at that point. They pollute the air, they're noisy, they smell, no instant torque, not very high tech, and they can't charge up at home overnight and cannot fuel any faster than a BEV at that point. They will be completely dead by then. They will also have lost their economy of scale. They will no longer be a good business case for the automakers to produce, because we have to remember that ICE cars today has a razor-thin margin on them. So it does not take much to make them completely financial suicide for the automakers to produce. Remember, most car manufacturers only earn like $1,000 to $2,000 on every car they sell. When people talk about EV adoption, it's like they completely forget that because BEVs are rising, ICE cars are falling. They think car manufacturers can just keep producing them at 50% the scale. But remember, Volkswagen European factories are already running at 60% utilization rate, which is already seen as unsustainable. What do you think will happen when they lose 50% of their ICE sales on a global scale, pushed by China? They will go from already unsustainable stage to completely dead. The ICE car is dying, and is dying fast, much faster than most people realize. As demand for ICE cars will shrink, and so will the demand for oil, affecting the whole industry and the cost of buying and running ICE cars and their supply chain. As China, the biggest market, goes 100% BEV, the rest of the industry will have to follow suit. And also because of all the regulation that is set in place in both China and Europe, that will also accelerate the transition over the next 5 years. And as the technology only gets better, we will have far superior BEVs in 2030 than ICE cars. I personally think they are already far superior today as an everyday car and acceleration and convenience, but that will be even more clear in 2030. And no one with a functional brain will buy an expensive, polluting ICE car in 2030. Of course, not all humans have a functional brain, so we will see how many is left of the people that would never buy a BEV. But they will not be the majority. And 2025 will be a year where we will see the old guys struggle like we have never seen before, and pure EV manufacturers will thrive. But if China are so superior, won't that also hurt Tesla? Well, everybody is dependent on China, but Tesla is already a pure BEV play, so they don't have any expensive and complicated shift to do. They just need to ramp up. And Tesla still is much more efficient than any of the Chinese automakers. Tesla is earning about $7,000 per car as of Q3 2024. All the Chinese are still losing money on selling their EVs. BYD did get back to profitability, but the 2 first quarters of 2024, they did not have positive free cash flow. So they don't have a high margin on their cars either. Remember, BYD has like 900,000 employees globally, whereas Tesla only have about 125,000. And BYD does not sell 7 times more cars than Tesla does. So Tesla still has a big advantage compared to everyone, including the Chinese. And Tesla is actually a very liked brand in China. Unlike many of the German BEVs, Tesla's Model Y did become the best-selling car of any kind in China in 2024, with about 480,000 units in just that model. So Tesla is very liked in China, as Tesla was the one that came to China and made EVs cool. That is the whole reason why Tesla was allowed to own 100% of their own factory in China, as the only OEM. Nobody else has gotten that permission, because China needed Tesla to help to make the Chinese people see EVs as the cool option. Not like a compromise, as China did bet big on EVs, and then the Chinese have of course tried to copy Tesla's cars and production method ever since. And if Tesla will really get full self-driving version 13 supervised to China in the first half of 2025, that will make demand for their cars shoot up like a rocket, as that is exactly the kind of high-tech thing the Chinese people like, and make the legacy automakers' EVs feel even more outdated than they already are. So Tesla is going their own way and is in a league of their own, as they are one of the most profitable mass car manufacturers in the world, while most others are losing money on EVs. And Tesla does have software-defined vehicles and that high tech that people like. Many of the legacy automakers are not there yet. So the Chinese are not really hurting Tesla that much, but helping Tesla with their mission to accelerate the world's transition to a sustainable future. But both the Chinese and Tesla are hurting the legacy automakers. And even though the Chinese are starting to come to Europe and hope to get into the US at some point, Tesla is already in all three places, with gigafactories on all three continents. Tesla will be just fine, as what China is pushing for is an all-electric future, and Tesla is already there, so this will only help Tesla. But the competition in the auto industry will just be changed out from names like GM, Volkswagen, Toyota, to names like BYD, Geely, and Li Auto. And I think we will see a lot of change happening here in 2025. And thank you for watching. And until next time, take care out there and be nice.